There we go.
Where's the
Oh, God. Three links. Three links.
Oh, God, no!
Like I was not going to.
We're gonna make it. Actually, secretly Indian.
Interpretation: most sides must be responsible for explaining how their vision would be implemented within existing structures of power to bring about change to the first instance is key to evaluating consequences. We isolate two types of consequences: power structures and structures believed prior to one over the other is problematic because power structures also influence individual agency and believed to this is key to preventing no dirty hands approach towards ethics. The King claims to be good through rejection but fails to consider the consequences of rejection and the affirmative action that they disavow, which makes them complicit in suffering and because they watch on the sidelines while the world dies. Second argument and third argument is that there should be prior to it's irreversible and worthless solves all possibility why life things are inherently subjective and require making determinations and speaking to the other finally dead violence inevitable is not meaning extinction is inevitable. There are generic structures that are able to check violence leading to extinction, aka mutually assured destruction and trade debts, but in specific proximate causes they break down the negative must explain why they would lead to these proximate causes. And also the thesis is that if there's a possibility for something to happen then it will necessarily happen. That's not an offense with the alternative because there was always a possibility that their methodology could go away in the future. They have to explain time frame inherency.
Can you repeat your interp real quick?
Both sides must be responsible for explaining how the vision would be implemented within existing structures of power to bring about change. Inherency. When permissive action links are defined by the Department of Defense as devices included or attached to a nuclear weapon system to preclude the accidental or launch of nuclear weapons until there was an insertion of a code or combination. They have been installed since in the early 90s, since the early 60s, I think. The second argument is that Pakistan was offered PALs, but the offer was rescinded because it did not occur. There were legal problems and because of restriction and because there was a lack of actual large-scale push. The plan: U.S. federal government should offer PAL technology to Pakistan for use in their nuclear arsenal. Yes.
Can we get a copy, please?
Can you just write it down? The U.S. federal government should offer PAL technology to Pakistan for use in their nuclear arsenal. Solvency. They say it's one imperative. They've accepted over $100 million in aid to modernize the nuclear arsenal in the early 2000s. Second arguments that they shifted. There's been a shift in policy makers. Musharraf was the one who in power when they were off in the 2000s and was the primary opposition towards PALs. Since then, he's been removed. And former new and moderate leadership has come in power. The third argument is that Bush was the one who was in power, which is why they wouldn't accept an offer by Obama. The final argument is that PAL systems are effectively, according to Peter Zimmerman, the nuclear physicist and weapons inspector, bypassing a PAL is as complicated as performing a tonsillectomy and while entering the patient for the wrong end. Advantage one is they're going to get our nukes. Uniqueness. Pakistan has a high risk of weapons being taken into test, but the first thing was last August, the armed militias attacked an Air Force base, which is 25 miles away from where 100 nuclear weapons are stored. Second argument is that Al-Qaeda operatives have said they're going to use Pakistani bombs if the opportunity arose, according to the National Journal. Third argument, they've increased capacity, Pakistan has increased capacity and is proliferating in the status quo. According to the ISIS, the research analyst Paul Brandon, Pakistan went from having one nuclear reactor to 3, and they're also doubled from in 2011 from 60 to 110, and they could reach 200 in the next 10 years. Left a little fourth argument is that nuclear scientists who sold fissile material to North Korea and Libya and offered it to Iran and Iraq, also sold designs to these actors, which means they have a mapping for what this would actually look like. It indicates there was a high propensity for people to try to get this technology to link as the plan solves one cross my solvency. The delays that rogue actors cannot, the rogue actors are not going to be able to use unilateral action because command and control is dispersed, and it means that if you input the incorrect launch code, it literally disarms the nuclear weapons. Second argument is the plan increases the focus on the arsenal delay. This deters the non-state actors because they are not going to go towards a technology that is extremely advanced and they know nothing about it and it's extremely well guarded. The third argument is that this encourages Pakistan to modernize the rest of their nuclear arsenal, increase security. Third argument, plan increases cooperation. The plan is care given by the United States, which means there's a great incentive to share information on counter-terrorism, counter non-state actor operations, and they aid in all of 2001 2007 increase access to intelligence intelligence sharing via cooperation. It means empirics. Fourth argument is new info. It's key to stopping rogue actors. The delays of new modernization makes it harder to actually gain access to these weapons. That's the second link argument. Internally, one nuclear non-state actor. The nuclear non-state actor necessarily is bad delays. They have the capacity and potential, according to Bruce. Believe the president, the Center for Defense Information said, quote, he would not be surprised if nuclear weapons were used over the next 15 years by a non-state actor who got hands-on a Pakistani nuclear weapon. The little is it's easy. One stick of cobalt 1 meter long, coupled with 10 pounds of explosives, would be able to wipe out my hand. The second argument this leads to Obama, the president of the United States, has said, quote, that we would retaliating kind is codified in U.S. law. I reckon Afghanistan also proved and we would attack Pakistan because we don't know whether or not Pakistan actually was one sending the nuclear device, and we can't tell necessarily if it was stolen. This would be seen as good political cover, which means that this leads to extinction and nuclear bombs going off. Industrial centers cause the trade winds to kick them around and blot out the sun. Advantage to its arms race. Unique, this arms race is happening now. Yes, there was escalation in India accused Pakistan of handing two Indian soldiers, and Pakistan called the propaganda. The reason that this is dangerous is because India revoked the ceasefire that they've had in place since 2003. Little is that the two governments are not in communication. When India's Prime Minister visited last week, Pakistan Prime Minister did not even talk with them or engage with them whatsoever. Second, China is exacerbating this. Little is that India objected to Chinese investment of information programs in the Kashmir border, and they've been putting arms on the border. Little is that to retaliate India and Pakistan both increase exploration of projects in the South China Sea. The Pakistan doesn't have capacity for keeping up conventionally, which means they're going to use nuclear weapons. Since the lesson of Pakistan, where India has adopted the Cold Charge Doctrine, which says that they would do rapid and debilitating nuclear weapon strikes to prevent the possibility of Pakistan retaliation. Pakistan responded by saying that it would use nuclear weapons if a conventional war started. The reason is because their conventional force would be rocked by India. The links to the plan solves one of the little A's that the U.S. is key brokering negotiations between India and Pakistan. Little A's and Obama. With a recent statement said that the U.S. has an interest in facilitating cooperation between the two sovereign countries. The Libya is that when Obama has proven for and created cooperation on discussion over Afghanistan issues between India and Pakistan. The little seats that State Department spokesman Victoria Nuland said that the U.S. has also a vested interest. The second argument said this decreases the chance of miscalculation, accidental launch, cross-supply solvency. It means that you can actually only launch when there's two codes. And the Libya said that this is Pakistan because the third argument is the plan also stops Chinese middle because it perceives as the U.S. getting into the region, which means they're not going to be and showing up Dallas. The internal links of the war is going to be really bad. One, it would necessarily increase the chance of miscalculation. Both sides have delegated command and control structures and quote flexible red lines, which means there's a high probability of miscalculation. A single actor who has hold of the button when they don't know what the actual threshold for using a nuclear weapon is. If they see a blip on the radar because they have terrible early warning systems, it means there's a high propensity for them actually launching and a conventional war necessarily goes nuclear. There are sufficient population centers of population density to cause the industrial fires that I say, which means we don't even have to win drawing, but there's a high likelihood of drawing because of economic interest.
Okay. It's going to be one off, but it's in two parts. I'd only like you to flow the second one. I'll be clear. So how many pages do I need for the? I don't know. You have to write down all the arguments. Oh, put top of case on top.
So are we flowing on case and then we stop flowing when we go off case?
Yes.
Just okay.
Yes.
And then you'll tell us when we need to flow again.
Yes.
Tell me when to flow.
Let me put it this way. You should flow at the very beginning and during the commercial breaks and end credits. That helps. It probably won't, so I'll be more specific. Their framework argument does not preclude any arguments regarding from the surrounding extent, and now they say that you must explain within the existing structures of power, like debate. Debate is a system of existing structure of power. No specificity as to whether it has to be a state existing structure of power. None of their standards are specific to state action, which means ultimately that, yeah, we're going to read some framework. In a second. Don't flow this. Welcome to Debate Nightly News. I'm Zach Moss with my co-host Bear Soule. Top of the hour breaking news, Circle Pine, Minnesota. Attractive 18-year-old white woman went missing. Thousands have been mobilized as part of a multi-county search party. Jessica Plummer was such a promising future. She was all-state and varsity track, a 4.0 GPA, and named prom queen. In other news, 446 children were killed by gun violence in Chicago last year. Following that is the economy. This week showed a 1.3% increase in GDP as well as wholesale orders. Noted economist Alex Warren said that alpaca futures were the key investment right now because of low interest rates and weakening dollar. Urban poverty and gentrification continues unabated. Tune in after commercial breaks for our new trend sweeping the nation. Turtles. Please flow this. Our interpretation is the judge should vote for the team who does the better debating. The judge should vote for the team who does the better debating. The one argument is the ballot says this. Any other framework is arbitrary based on preconceived notions of how debaters are supposed to interact with the topic. Two argument is all debate is representations, which means that you should substantively design the desirability of your methodology of your performance, and the judge should vote for the better performance. Third argument is representations come first. The eighth one is you can't weigh impacts without the rhetoric that you actually use to reach the advantage impacts, which ultimately means that representations are integral to that. The argument is that the way that the policy presented is at least important because it frames the problems and solutions which are underlined by a web of symbolic realities we should untangle. The C argument is that failure ignores the social context of the affirmative course of action, which produces endless error replication, means you can't solve, and it will be clear that we're criticizing what informs their framework anyways, so that's irrelevant. Welcome back. Please don't blow this. Pet tortoises have become the new rape, as thousands across the nation are going through hoops to secure these Southeast Asian creatures for only $150. Wait, this just in. Congress has just offered Pakistan PAL technology for their nuclear program. This is unbelievable. There's fighting in the House and Senate. Mitch McConnell demanded to know why we're planning on making Pakistan PALs when they complain about our drone policy, and Rand Paul mused on whether or not U.S. companies could just use the free market and sell their technology like Xbox 360s. Finally, Martin King won the first ever Reno arms race with his highly technical fist walk style. End credits. Please write this. The one is that the reality is being replaced by the hyperreal. It's a metaphorical Disney world in which images replace reality and become infinitely repeating in the virtual universe. The real is just becomes a spectacle, but not because we are outside looking in, but because we are the spectacle with our constant participation in reality, TV, and violence. The argument is that this is not more pervasive than the debate status quo, because the demands of the affirmed to resolve structural violence through having meal-sized bites of this process to manufactured advocacy is a specter upon itself, in which teams play pin the internal link on each other or a cycle of codifying the specific forms of violence, which are the worst. The third argument is that codification of things like this are ultimately a negative referent, a waste product of the image system, which does not code the code itself does not become the priority or even processional to the object. The fourth argument is the distance between object and representation or thing and the idea are no longer valid. They are instead replaced by a new world construction constructed out of models and simulacra with no referent or ground in any reality besides their own. The fifth argument is that the simulation is not a fictional lie, in that it not only presents an absence as a present, but imaginary is real, but also undermines contrast to the real, absorbing real within itself. The sixth argument is that not only hyperreal world of self-referential signs are framing is moved from the TV ad, which does not erase the commodity of markets to newscast to instead TV newscast, which creates news just a narrative. Next are the case links. The first arguments of the affirmative emphasis on perfect scientific objectivity reproduced in an affirmation of simulation. Those are all the arguments and why they're the arguments is why Paltech is good. The second argument is that goal-oriented focus on culture is a secret side of despair for this thought, but not a despair for the world, but instead our despair towards the affirmative discourse. The eighth point is that the real depressing thought emerges when people talk about transforming the world, but is totally unable to transfigure their own language. The B argument is the desire to resolve global issues of violence through highlighting of suffering of others as a positive feedback loop with consumption of violence. The C argument is that the craving is insatiable and as new population need to be dug out and ultimately used up. The third argument is that nuclear weapons are thought to be an external force, but the energy collapses in upon itself and corrupts the two and causes their destruction because nuclear weapons are literally never used. The fourth argument is assumption of ultimate catastrophe and extinction is ultimately a demand for participation within the simulation. The fifth argument is that arms race is presumed as a bounded event situates the affirmative remains firmly within the performance of simulation. Therefore, the advocacy. Our alternative is precisely the absence of an alternative. We will read the MO overview to this now. The lack of alternatives competing through the insistence of the plan which informs the permutation is a reflection that their strategy is capable of being condensed to a singular statement which enables their strategy to manifest in biopolitical management, mainly by powerful elites, co-option by institutional structures, and is therefore vulnerable to being reduced to its transformational potential. The two is the absence of an alternative embodies the methodology reflected by our performative approach. The third argument is that we refuse to allow our performative gesture to be condensed into a singular statement of advocacy. Our approach instead is an imaginative reflection of the capacity to inject agency in a way that is not contingent on specific demands, opening up a space for personal and political subjectivities to inform deliberation. And embracing the absence of an alternative demonstrates a commitment to refusing to allow ourselves to be subjected to misunderstandings, misguided notions of objective truth, and biopolitical management strategies which foreclose discursive space for registering the violent social order of the status quo. The fourth argument is the strategic resistance is that the refusal of hyperconformist simulation is a way of mechanisms of the system, which is a form of refusal and of non-reception. The fifth argument is it is a strategy of the masses. The doubling of ourselves, our performance is ultimately the mirror upon which the light of debate can be shined on and reflected, ultimately destroying the system we reflect. The sixth argument is that with any performance there may indeed appear to be bite-sized, but it is instead a unique non-textual performance which cannot be bounded by any arbitrary parameters other than the rule of time. The B argument is that even if we are bite-sized, we do so from a position of strategic resistance. The seven is I would prefer not to. The 8 point is the story of Bartleby by Herman Melville, specifically about a character who does not just refuse to do things, but says I would prefer not to. This is specifically what we talk about in strategic resistance. The B point is Bartleby's I would prefer not to is linked to a political process, the starting point of abstract negation, which should be overcome in the patient positive work of determinate negation of the existing social universe. This allows us to break free from the constraints of the dominant ideological coordinates that our criticism indicts. The C argument is this is how we passed from the politics resistant to our protestation, which parasitizes upon what it negates to a politics which opens up a new space outside the hegemonic position and its negation. It is this possible and different space that allows for reorientation of our individual and collective orientation in political spheres. The D argument is the impact of performative methods of determinist negotiation is that we become subservient and reliant upon the existing coordinates as a locus point for resistance, reifying the harms they indict. The eighth argument is radical free will. The A point is our methods problematize contemporary notions of free will by operating within the gray area between determinate and abstract negation. The B point is the affirmative framework is one in which they cede all agency to operating solely within existing structures of power, denying them of the potential for transformative change. The C argument is our Whitman alternative is the only pragmatic method. Our own thoughts and imagination, the most proximal existing power structures, the institutions that shape the world were constructed from individuals who had made active choices and how they choose to exert their influence on others. The D argument is the free will espoused by our lack of an alternative is necessary for schemes of liberation which are not determinately compelled by existing power structures and the desire for bite-sized approaches to liberatory politics. Is that good? 4 seconds? Order.
The order is going to be the case offered. Then the radical free will, well, the framework, the radical free will, related stuff, alternative, then the links, and well, then the links and the thesis, well, the thesis and all.
So the second commercial breakdown and then back up to the alt.
Yeah, second commercial break back to the alt, and then their thesis page was like the reality replaced by hyper-real spectacles on that rolling page. You have to explain how you envision this implement within this structure of power usage, the structure of power, how number one, you don't actually meet this obligation to explain how you envision implement. Number two is that you don't actually talk about how this is going to be implemented in the broader structure of power, which means even if we don't specify what kind of structure of power structure, we still get access to things like the way power structure interacts with the alternative, or your advocacy means advocacy, which means you have to insolvency page alternatives, or your lack of alternative, whatever. Extend our entire affirmative. This is exactly indicted with our arguments, specifically the no dirty hands approach in a world where we have actual real suffering that is happening in the world, and they refuse to take action. That is exemplification of the no dirty hands approach. Yes.
Yeah. If there are people who are out there,
you can make that argument.
Why aren't you there? Why aren't you helping those people?
We're saying that we should take those steps. Go on to their interpretation. You say that you should vote for the team that's better debating. We believe the team that's better debating. One has better advocacy, and the one that has better advocacy. You say we're ignoring social context. All of our solvency claims are reasons why we're taking into account the social context. If you have to win that we're ignoring the social context, you have to make solvency claims on firms, which means no good actions. This argument. You say increased radical free will. Number one is that we do not see the agency to power structure. That's exactly the way the fiat is the way that we interrogate our relationship to power structure and the relationship to power structure to the problems that exist. We are more able to understand our arguments. The fiat allows us to understand things that the power structure should do, i.e. things that we should get the power structure to do, and understand a relationship, which means the fiat is an exercise of radical free will. You say that these are necessary for the scheme of liberation. We believe the fiat engagement fiat related debate is necessary for the scheme of liberation because we have to understand what our schemes have to be and how we can use the power structure to reform power structure to liberate ourselves alternative. First, you say refuse to be to be condensed. Scruples, these arguments occupy Wall Street was basically that, and they essentially get anything done. That all that led to was ceding the political when the right wingers were able to take power through an organization like the Tea Party, which indicates that which means after the alternative, much more conservative people to take power. Additional people have an incentive to smite you because you're trying to resist the powers that be, which means it causes them to become more entrenched and slap you down. Additionally, you say you create space for more worse things to fill in. That is not just the political argument, but also worse kind of ideology. Especially when you say you refuse to be condensed, and allow subjectivity to take over. That means subjectivity of neo-Nazis and racists will be accepted under your space as well, which means space gets corrupted by people who do not want to solve the alternative. Additionally, engaging in the real world is good realism. It's good people assume that you engage in the real world realist world, which means when you engage in these kind of non-realist mindset opens you up for exploitation. Means that your alternative never gets solved. Additionally, you're essentially escapism paralysis. Also, this is infinitely regressive. That causes this is basically ivory tower ideology. Let's sit there and do nothing. Causes things like G-Jacks and exploitation is good because somehow solves for communism. Additionally, your absolute rejection be condensed creates kind of obvious absolute evil that creates a rallying point for co-option. This is how people like the IDF were able to co-opt specific ideologies and justify their actions in Palestinian settlements. Additionally, your method of use evil as monolithic means you do not understand interdynamic relationships between things like simulacrum, the way that simulacrum, and you actually don't have any ability to solve for it because you don't understand what the problem is. Additionally, your method foreclosed solvents for our affirmative, which means our impacts would justify our methodology. And that's the fact that our methods is able to help us understand and deal with the problems that's happening in the status quo. Insofar as that is justification of methodology.
Make the argument that the system has already been exposed, the mirror has been reflected on it, and they've rejected that exposure.
Okay, and the system has already been exposed, and the mirror has been reflected on. They have rejected that exposure, which indicates that you have zero ability to solve. It's just the alternative, and I guess permutation would just be do the plan. Yeah, if you do nothing can solve all the problems happening now, probably means there's no impact to the there's no residual link to the plan. Additionally, utopianism is bad in our interpretation. You must have a vision of post-alternative violation that you just say we're going to resist, we're going to create a space. You don't actually have understand what alternative world is. The standards versus reciprocity. Our burden is to explain through solvency what the post-alternative world is going to look like. But you refuse that burden, which makes debate infinite and unfair for us. Also, about free world education and activism. Debate is a space for if debate is good, education space has to teach us how to become activists. If activists have to have a goal in mind that they have to work for, which means you're determined bad for education. Additionally, it's bad for ground laws for inevitably solves backclaim, subtraction, alternative causes, makes it impossible for us to win or weigh any kind of solvency deficits. Voters for fairness and education go on to the reality arguments. We believe that provisional truth is good. All of your arguments saying the reality is bad. But we believe that provisional truth is good. That is why we have things like world comparison. Number one is provisional truth. It's the way that we come to understand the world. That is why we have things. That is why we have things like science as well as that is why we have things like science that is necessary to help us engage with the world. These provisional truths are open to change, which means all of the impacts to solve for. If we find out that one of our provisional truths is actually false and we're able to revise that, additional simulations are good. Simulations is the reason why we're able to test the way that we test our effects on the world before we go on and do them. That's why we have things like global warming science. We know that if we do a certain kind of action, the global warming will kill us all, which is why we don't do these kinds of things. Also keep things like mad, because we know through our mental simulation that if we nuke another country, that they'll nuke us back, which is the reason why we don't nuke other countries. These are reasons why simulations are good for checking back. Also, the real is inaccessible. We have to interact with the world through science and language. Between the world where the language can never fully represent the world. That is the reason why. That is why all of your arguments are termed now unique. We have to use provisional truth. Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay. Go to the links. All of your links are now unique. You say you basically say we're You say that we can reduce violence into bite-sized chunks. That's exactly what news that's united would sell back for these kind of things. Additionally, things like science and international relations and political theory makes the assimilation inevitable, which means we always necessarily live in this kind of things. And other rounds, when people are debating policy, those are all instances of assimilation, which indicates that these kinds of thinking is not unique. Anything else, everyone? What?
No.
Okay. I have a minute. Anything?
Yeah, go back to the alt.
What? Go back to the alt. Okay. Go back to the alt.
Explain when you say the system has been exposed already, i.e., people have written about this kind of theory. People criticize things as not real. Derrida.
People have. Okay. Yes. System has been exposed. People have written about these kinds of things already, and Lewis and Clark and Adam Teshman has already been running these kind of alternatives, which indicates that the system has already been exposed. If running this criticism or voting for this criticism would solve, then you should have solved already. Anything else there?
Yes.
No. What's the question?
No questions, they fall.
Their framework,
Yeah, of course.
the alternative, our framework, the links page, and then the end credits, like these arguments. Anybody not ready? Sweet. We've already conceded the political means all their offense is 100% non-unique, and there's only risk the alternative fractures the same types of dominant political institution that we criticize. On their framework first argumentation, they say that we have to implement it within the broader scheme, and the other conceded arguments indicate that these broader structures are only made up of individuals. Means it starts with us. Means that there's a critical way that you have to evaluate around with your balance to who best performs the methodology engaged with the topic, which means that always the reward is going to be ahead on that debate, because you continue critical arguments indicate that debate is nothing more than a sphere of intellectual masturbation, where we just functionally read all these arguments and claim solve back for extinction, but nothing is done. They continue to say that we have to be able to solve back for liberation with fiat, but they're not trying to solve back for any liberation with fiat. They're trying to claim that through this multiple scenario eternally chance that they will solve back for extinction issue. They say dirty hands. Our argument says that we don't refuse to act. We take a reorientation to the political spheres around us. That is literally the alternative solving strategy we're reading, which indicates that we operate within the gray space between determined negation and abstract negation. Means we don't advocate for nihilism or doing nothing. We advocate reorientation of politics, which means that you will always prefer which team best engages within the existing spheres of power, which we say is our individual subjectivities and our individual choices to make ontological determination about how to interact with the alternative. Usually Occupy Wall Street, first argumentation here is going to be that one argument says that Occupy Wall Street actually succeeded. An argument says that your notion that they didn't have a finite beginning and end point of success, in which they could have a clear marker of what their success is exactly indicative of the same types of logic that we're criticizing now. The LLC, which indicates you have to have clear bounded end points, beginning points, you would ever have any type of solvency. Argument says that Occupy Wall Street changed the discourse of the global order. Argument says that it has literally spurred activism within places such as Israel and also places such as Chile, where students were protesting over the prices of college. Additionally, you said that people were going to smite us. So he says, bring it on. Argument says they're already smiting us from the status quo. It's only a question of how we reorient our individual politics, which means that if they want to smite us, they can try to smite us. We will fight back against that system, which means that also there's no impact to the smiting argument and no need to use our claim. This next argument is absolutely also no link to this argument. There's not, they don't really specifically argue in the case that anyone's in this round is going to smite us or go tell the government who's going to smite us. There's no impact to that argument. So they say worst things are going to fill in. Argument says that we already have neo-Nazis in Congress now. Argument says Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Obama are all imperialist warlords who are literally killing Pakistanis as we speak. Means there's no unique and you're claiming neo-Nazis coming into this next argument is also you say that realism argument says realism not available. Realism as a international relations frame literally started with the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. It's not available. This next argument also though is you say it's going to cause exploitation. Argument says no, it's not. No unique use of exploitation. People are being exploited right now. The status quo literally 2 billion people live off of dollar day. Probably means that exploitation is the status quo. It's only a question of how we reframe our individual subjectivities and ontologies. This next argument you say we cause paralysis. You're concede arguments to indicate that we cannot operate in paralysis. We are not infinitely regressive. We are a reorientation of our politics in the gray area between determined and abstract negation, which means that we can always be able to solve this back condition next time here. You also say it's co-opted argument says that there's no way to co-opt the lack of a specific method because of the radical imaginative nature of the lack of the alternative, which is that we need to stop having these bounded notions of what it is to solve for something, which means that there's no way to co-opt that argument. This next argument is happening the status quo, the demands of the institution. The status quo are causing people to literally kill people because that's what makes the money. That is how global finance works. The status quo, high frequency traders literally are causing massive amounts of food speculation. The status quo means that all your arguments are not unconditional. You say that the impact justifies methodology. LOL, that's literally justification for our rat. We said that W&Ds means that if we can have a big enough impact to justify our claim that the obviously methodology must be true. This literally justifies colonial war ventures. We say also makes no bad life because we're going to happen to just disposable tools on a chessboard. Next time you also you say that the system has already been exposed. First argument here, not a war for this argument. You just said that people wrote about it. Yeah, people have also probably written about your app. Not a reason why you wouldn't vote for the app. Additionally, the next argument is also somebody reading this argument another round is also not a reason to do this because probably read your app in a policy ground somewhere back way back in the day, or probably read a similar app. I do this. Additionally, next argument here, you say perm to the plan argument says that the permutation is is what we indict as the bite-sized approach to the manufactured, prepackaged, and pre-sealed solutions for problems that we literally talk about with the status quo, which means that the lack of alternatives is the only way to break out the rational ground and create new radical politics and radical imagination, which we can break ourselves from these ominous systems. Is also there's no net benefit to the permutation. We will read arguments that indicate that there's no net benefit to the permutation whatsoever. Additionally, you say we must have a vision. Argument says that we do have a vision. The fact that you cannot conceive of the lack of alternative as a vision is indicate that you are stuck in the same types of problematic mentality as the status quo, in which you fail to understand politics as being able to break away from the same dominant epistemology of the status quo. Additionally, you say it's reciprocal argument says that the lack of alternative is a new vision. It precisely is 180 degree reverse of the current vision, which means we saw back in the issue. You say ground no impact to ground argument says education always outweighs ground, and also there's no uproar or any type of frame area, so I can validate it. You say we don't become active because argument says only mode of alternative. Can you solve this back? Free will.
Wait, can you answer the ivory tower argument?
Oh yeah, your app is totally ivory tower, bro. You're sitting in a college talking about solving back for extinction by giving some weapons to people. If that's not ivory tower, I don't know what it is. Free will. They say we see the agency, they can see that we've already seen the agency in the status quo by literally ceding our agency to the dominant structures of the status quo and just agreeing that we will operate within whatever constructs those systems have created, which is literally causes this to happen. You said they'll never be able to understand what they do. Our argument says that the cross-planet mental masturbation argument about what they do in the PMC is nothing better, and also it's not about your app, it's not about liberation. Except our free will argument indicates the new scheme is liberation, and how this is the only pragmatic method. Probably means we mean your framework interpretation much better. Our framework. Their argument that it has to be a better advocacy is exactly indicative of the bite-sized approach that we criticize in the LLC. All those arguments why it's true. Additionally, you say we have to take into account social context. Argument says that the social context is the methodology behind which you present your impact via the core methodology, which means that you're always going to be linking the links page. You say non-unique argument says our links are pretty specific because they're all specific to the PMC, which means they didn't happen before the PMC. That probably gives us unique for our claims. Additionally, you say the news cycle does this, so you don't concede arguments on also the argument indicates we can solve back through doubling by reflecting the mirror at it, but not absorbing it, which means that we can solve back through doubling, which means we solve this argument. Additionally, you say scientific objectivity, all stuff makes this inevitable. Argument says it's a question of how we individually relate ontologically and epistemologically with this individual debate round. Also, even if those things are inevitable, the inevitability of violence within the global structure is not a good reason to refuse to strategize against those systems of power, which means that we always carry the best use on the question, except all related arguments indicate that your drive for perfect scientific objectivity collapses, and also extend all the arguments about the bounded defense of the arms race, and also the argument about the consumption of violence, and the goal-oriented focus on torture, and also the energy collapsing. All those conceded links, these are all also independent disaster permutations. These are also reasons why the permutation also links to those arguments. Additionally, thesis. You say provisional truth is good. Our argument says one, even provisional truth is good within the larger context outside this round. They have not written arguments about why, but specifically within the context of academic debates and parliamentary debate, why provisional truth is good, which means there's no argument, there's no context in the argument. Also, though, our argument says that even if that's true, but we say that we can, our alternative is a prerequisite to engaging with provisional truth because it's a question of how you relate to those truths. The argument says that truths are nothing more than things that we interpret from the external world, which means that our abstract negation is able to reframe how we engage with those truths, which means that we are a prerequisite to solving back this. You say we must test the effect. Yeah, that's what they said for the Tuskegee syphilis experience, bro. Like, you don't test anything. Our argument says that trying to say that you can test things as a prerequisite to determining methodologies literally what justifies slavery, genocide, and a host of other horrible things. This, you say that the real is not accessible. Argument says that the lack of alternative makes the real accessible because we can find new, radically imaginative ways to break out of this and create new schemes of liberation, which you have conceded the alternative alone can do, which means that we saw back in the entirety of the end credits argument indicates that reality has been replaced by the hyper-real, and that your approach is only a happy meal size and a spectacle, and the codification that you provide within your case to the concrete objectivity is a negative frame, which literally becomes a waste product, and distance ourselves from the real, which means that the imaginary becomes real, and you just replicate the same news cycle that we've been hearing for hundreds of years, which is degradation of the environment, degradation of the soul, and degradation of the entire global sphere.
It's going to be an overview. Then it's going to be a framework debate. So let's start with their framework and our framework. Then it's going to be the thesis page. Then it's going to be the links page. Then it's going to be the alternative page.
Just so you all know, I played the whole LOR.
When you ask yourself whether you're going to vote after this round, you should think hard and say, I would prefer not to. That is the advocacy of the negative, that instead of taking a rejection, we should actually make a preference and prefer not to do something that forces us further into the simulation in order to engage in a world in which we actually have opportunity to break out of the systems that actually control us and create something good in the world. Framework. Their dirty hands argument is laughable in a world where they are sitting here in a debate round attempting to beat us on an argument about Pakistan, completely ignoring the Pakistani people, especially in a world where their plan functionally allows for more suffering of Pakistanis as a result of drone combat. Ultimately means that any risk of them getting offense off this is laughable. Furthermore, you can extend our arguments about debate as power structure. Next, go to all our framework. Their arguments are laughable in a world where we've already seen the political to the debate masters. I'm sure they had to sign a contract at the beginning of the year saying, yes, Jim, I see my political to you, and it's been doing pretty well for them, but not in this round. You can extend our specific argument, specifically number 3 about how representations come first, not responded to at all. It means that you always have to evaluate the performance of the 4 debaters in the round before that. When we win specific solvency arguments to how our performance is the only way to give us a risk of breaking out of this through the newscast, ultimately means that they hard link can't solve for the alt outweighs because it's the only in-round thing. Thesis. You're not going to win on simulations good because there are bad simulations as well. Specifically, the largest simulation, which is the simulation you choose to participate in, like this debate round, ultimately means that you are firmly locked into this world in which you will constantly find the suffering of others and find new populations in order to make them suffer so you can get pleasure off of that suffering. Ultimately means that there will culminate in the ultimate collapse of value to life in a world where they just literally make everyone suffer. Ultimately means that you can extend things like the number 4 and 5 arguments about how they just make things unreal. And we attempt to break that down through our newscast. Also, there's no specificity as to what provisional truth is. None of their arguments are contextualized to the round. Let's go to the links. Once again, permanent uniqueness for this argument. We couldn't have these links until you read an app that linked to it. That ultimately means that in a world where our framework is about the debate round, means we cold link specifically the number 4 and number 5 arguments about catastrophe and arms race. 100% conceded means they are specific links to their both their rhetoric as well as the advocacy, and the PMC means that at the very least we are accessing links that are not unique in that fashion. Let's go to the alt. We prefer not to allow you to put us into little boxes so that we can be sold to America just like Che Guevara's shirts. That is the alternative. It's not framing the world in terms of plan versus counterplan, sentence versus sentence, but instead to take a preference to not engage in that system is the only way to ultimately break out of it. They can see all of our arguments. The entire MG is blocks. No analysis of how it engages with our specific alternative arguments means that we get 100% access to these, which means functionally all of their arguments are parallel at that point. You can extend specifically the number 3 about how our performative gesture they cannot be bound, which ultimately is a reflection of the ability to inject agency into a system. Our argument is that there is no agency because we all see it in our political a long time ago when we weren't paying attention, but there's only one way in order to give us access to that again. Ultimately means that any impact that they attempt to generate in this round is all based off of the having agency as a prerequisite. In a world where they do not have that agency from the start, means they get no uniqueness for their impacts and can't leverage any offense on that. There are some specific arguments that I want to talk about on the line memo, though. This theory argument that Martin's going to go for. We tell you what the post-alt world is. The post-alt world is a world in which you prefer not to vote for the affirmative. It goes on just like any other day. We walk out of this round and people keep having debates, but that is not what's important. What's important is the fact that the three of you are going to take an opportunity to prefer not to engage in a system which is bad in and of itself, which is probably a good thing. We read specific arguments at the bottom of this, the radical free will arguments that talk about how when we don't have agency, we ultimately become a part of the machine to be consumed. We are all the sufferers at that point. This 100% outweighs any leverage that they be able to generate on the rhetorical level of their impacts, because if you don't have agency, you can't even save yourself, which means you can't create meaning or have value to life in that world, which ultimately means like we might as well extinct ourselves if we're going to continue living in the simulation. Vote nay.
Okay, the order is going to be an overview, and then it's going to be framework, then it's going to be
Yours are there.
what?
Yours are there.
Our framework, and then their framework. And then, I'll go down in links, impacts, or not just links, different impacts, and then I'll.
You're dating Gabriella stand?
The David Gabrielle stand. Pretty old.
I mean, that makes sense. No.
David was studying when I was a freshman.
Oh, cool.
Harry Reid now.
Fascinating.
Everyone ready?
Do not be fooled. Saying things like, quote, only in this debate space and the only thing that matters is our methodology in this round is not a clever way of getting out of our impacts. It is a way of saying that you solve for literally nothing. All of the offense that links to us is also offense that links to them as well. They say that we do not go out in the world and change and actually prevent extinction from happening. Well, neither do you, which means it's only a question of the methodology that could possibly do that. The only methodology that has any offense in this round is the affirmative. It is proven by our impact. We have read an affirmative that says that engaging in political structures has the propensity to create transformative change. If we did the affirmative policy, then we would be able to prevent extinction. This is the only warning in this debate round about whose methodology could ever do something in the future, which means there was only a risk of offense for us.
I just want to clarify one thing. He uses the word political specifically to refer to power structures in this overview. And I just want to point out that previous to this, in the constructive speeches, it was power structures, and now he's attempting to characterize it only as political power structures.
Okay, well, I think Sean's answer to framework is pretty intuitive because he says we must talk about broader structures of power, and then he talks about things like Congress and politics and stuff.
I will consider this while making my decision.
Sure, yes. So we're on framework.
Framework, because Sterling would say it's pretty simple. The framework functions like this. It says that you cannot just talk about your methodology within this round, but also how your methodology could function within the real world, i.e. would shining a mirror in front of Bush actually make him stop committing genocide in Iraq? No, it would not, but would engaging with that political institution solve that? Perhaps. And would rejecting the simulacrum ever solve? No, because guess what? That shit is inevitable language. That's the argument you concede, and it's the argument that wins us the round now. But their framework, they have conceded a couple of arguments. One is that fiat is a way that we interrogate and we do not cede agency, rather we reclaim freedom, which means we solve 100% of their alternative arguments, especially when none of their unique offense, which is that we engage in a simulation, is unique to, it's also linking into them because they use language. Also conceded that and this is an example of free world. They say that the PMC is mental masturbation. Well, so are you. We're all masturbating. It's a question of whose masturbation could do jack shit, and that's only us. You say that we have ceded agency in the scope. We resolve this. Okay, here's this thing, the main uniqueness question. Both, the agency has been ceded, so it's a question of which methodology could possibly reclaim the political. Theirs could not, because they have mishandled our alt solvency arguments. Ours possibly could, because it does not link to them, and it means the permutation is the only possibility of a possible round. We're now go to the provisional truth arguments. This is where you have lost a debate. You say, because extend the provisional truth argument specifically that the assimilation is key to testing in a world where we do not have assimilation, we still, this is key for mutually assured destruction, because we know what the effects effects of using nuclear weapons are it's key to preventing it's key to affecting warming. The reason why this is an impact and is an extinction is that to their framework is because the motivations for war, for things that mutually assured destruction needs to check, the motivations for environmental destruction, those interests that purport that and propel that are not solved by their methodology. So even if it was adopted, it would be co-opted and it would be negative. This is offense against, then they see this as key. This is justification of experimentation. Even if we don't experiment, we still have a justification to be bad against the Jews, bad against black people, and bad against the other. That is our co-optation argument. You do not solve the incentive that produces that, which means you do not solve anything. Now go to the question of the real being unacceptable. You have straight conceded that language can never be a full representation of the world, which means we can't know the world ever. This is why Derrida is awesome and why postmodernism is awesome. You can't know the world because in order to try to fully describe it, you have to use language, you have to use a referent that is inherently incomplete. That means that it is implicit within your alternative, which is embedded within language and within structures that you cannot solve. This means that there was no offense against the permutation. There was only a risk that the permutation has offense for us. Now go to the alternative page. Alt. Occupy Wall Street. We are just the same as Occupy Wall Street if we're all within this debate space, but the methodology behind our Occupy is going to be far better than yours. Now, the question of co-optation. One, you say that you can't co-opt this because it has a lack of a specific method. LOL, this is exactly why it would be co-opted, because there is no methodology behind it. It is just a radical statement that we should open ourselves up, but some people are going to not open ourselves up and not engage in a simulation. Fine, that means the Bushes of the world are going to say, I'm not engaging in a simulation. I already know the facts, and now I am going to kill you. It's the reason why vested interests would not give up their power. Otherwise, there was an incentive for them to never to reject your methodology, and your methodology is bad because it could not happen within the real world. This is a realism argument. You say that it was started with Westphalia, which means it's not going to go away. Well, fine, but you're not able to overcome it because realism would necessarily reject this because it relies on simulation, aka mutually assured destruction, aka threat con. And as soon as someone gives that up, then it has a propensity for someone else to attack you. Now you extend this is necessarily going to be co-opted by the IDF. The IDF is a perfect example of this. People said that we should have.
That was like we should be open to everything.
We should be open to everything. You said we should be open to everything.
Open to everything.
We should be open to killing people as well. There was no reason. You also conceive that you view evil as a monolith, which means there is literally no way to solve.
The AF is the only possible method that has offense in this round. Yeah.
Very good debate. Very rude, the rest of the people who clap.